Hey guys, and welcome to Ozzie Reviews, and welcome to September Q&A. Now guys, as I always say, if you want to become a part of this, you can. All you need to do is simply be a donator via Patreon or PayPal. Honestly guys, without you at home who support me with this, I don't think I'd be able to turn out the content that I do, because it does make a very, very big difference. So thank you to all of you who support me. So let's get into this month's questions. First question I got here is from Mitch, and he says, hey Ozzie, I noticed that you weren't that impressed with the accuracy of the WFA1, so the Warwick Firearms straight pull in 300 blackout. Any chance of a Wedgetail Industry review of the 308 pump? Well Mitch, yeah, I'm pretty keen to do one, so mate, perhaps in the future, I can definitely get a hold of one and do that for you. So from what I've seen, there's only been a handful of guys who have commented about, either having one or used one, and it seems to be pretty positive, the feedback there. So yeah, by all means, very interested to do a review on one. Next question I got here is from Jared, and he says, hey Ozzie, what's the difference in 338 Winchester Magnum, 338 Federal and 338 Lapua Magnum? Well mate, pretty much the difference is you either want to use it for hunting or you want to use it for target. Now the 338 Lapua was designed earlier on in the early 80s, and that was what it was designed for, was that long range accuracy. So it is predominantly designed to be a target round. However, now of course they are releasing different factory ammunition in 338 Lapua with good hunting projectiles. So you can use it for both. Some may say it's overkill. Look, I've certainly used one before, and yeah, they pack a lot of punch, that's for sure. So yeah, more for target, I'd be leaning that way. But if you want to go sort of hunting, the 338 Winchester Magnum and also 338 Federal, I mean, have a look at them. I don't know of any target load for any of those calibers, from the factory I'm talking about. Obviously, you could get different match projectiles and load them, no dramas there. But, from the factory, it's all targeted towards hunting. So, yeah, mate, that's pretty much, I hope that answers your question. That's pretty much all I can say about it. Other than, 338 Winchester Magnum is a very, very good caliber. Great for buffalo and those heavy, thick-skinned game where you've got to have something with a decent amount of punch, to penetrate deep enough into the vital organs to make a humane kill. So very good for that. But yeah, if your choice was for obviously the ultimate long-range shooting, well, 338 Lapua is certainly a top 3 contender of calibers there in my view. So yeah, hope that answers your question. Next question I've got here is from Mick, and he says, hey Ozzie, I've got a 22, a 243, 308 and a straight pull 12 gauge shotgun. I've been offered a heavy barrel Hauer in 223 with a loophole VX2 2 to 12 by 40 scope for $500. What's your thoughts on me buying it? Will it fill the gap? Well, mate, looking at what you got here, 22, and then you jump to 243. I mean, obviously that's a big jump. 243 is a great caliber, but is it something you want to be, shooting a heap of foxes and stuff like that with, or do you want something in between? 223, I like 223. The reason I say it, is for years, even since I was a kid, if you had a 223, it opened up a whole heap of possibilities with getting onto different properties to be able to shoot, because usually, a farmer will ask you what caliber you got, and anything over 223, you were seen as Rambo. It was funny how that was back then, but I'm pretty sure a lot of that carries over to this day as well. So where I'm going with it, mate, is 223 is great because obviously, you can reload fairly cheap for it, not to mention the ammo specials, you can get on it, just make reloading not even worth it. So, you've got that option as well. You can also get the very light weight projectiles, but yet go right up to like 75 grain hunting ammunition as well. So, I just see it as a very versatile caliber. And, if I was in your position, that's what you're asking me, mate, yeah, I'd jump on it because, there is a big gap there between 22 and 243, as I say. Now, next question here is from John. He says, hey, Ozzie, thanks for your help last time. Very helpful. I joined up through the SSAA Farmer Assist program, and I've applied to help a farmer with a wild dog problem. The farm is only 10 acres, but if I use this as a genuine reason to get my license, weapons licensing would require 40 acres. Can you explain that? Well, mate, yeah, it is a problem because, you know, that 40 acres is just simply a policy. I mean, it's not written into legislation at all. So what a lot of people don't realise is, you know, to first obtain your A and B licence, you've got to do one or two things. Either be a member of a club, and then you'll get your recreational endorsement as well. In other words, you know, for hunting and shooting on private property. Or if you get a letter from a landowner, then you'll also get the target and club endorsement as well. So you've really only got to satisfy just one of them and you'll get the other. Okay, so that's here in Queensland. So yeah, it's pretty annoying there because under the legislation, I mean, provided it's zone rural and it's not in any major township, you know, so in other words, it's not 10 acres of rural land in the middle of a town or city, provided it's, you know, outside of town, then you can shoot on it quite legally. However, what they're saying here is just to get your license over the line, they want you to have a minimum of a 40-acre property if you're using a letter from a landowner as the reason or genuine reason to get that A and B license. So I really hope that makes sense. So, you know, once you've got the license, there's absolutely nothing stopping you. For example, here where you're saying you've got a farmer who's got a problem with wild dogs, they're only on 10 acres. Well, you know, provided it's zone rural, and as I say, doesn't fall with any, within any township or major city, then, you know, you're fine there. You just follow the legislation and, you know, be safe. And yeah, so I can't see any problem there. Now, the last part, you've got an extra, you know, onto your end of your question here. So you've just asked me here, do I have any experience with night vision scopes? I'm looking at something for pigs and other ferals, and thermal is expensive. I've been looking at the site Mark Rafe HD scope. No, I don't know that one, mate, as in I've not used it, so I can't give you any advice on that, I'm afraid. The ones that I have had a look at, I mean, look, I've looked at some really high-end stuff that's thousands and thousands of dollars, and, you know, it's not really within people's reach. So, you know, that's why I don't talk about that a lot. But some of the cheaper stuff that I have used is the ATN. Now, that's the X-Sight HD and also the 4K version. Mate, honestly, they were that bad, I couldn't even review them. So that was just my own thought on it. So I wouldn't recommend going near those particular models. Mate, perhaps let's put it out to people who are watching this. Maybe there's some suggestions that people can make. You know, please comment below if you can help John out with this. Now, I've got another question from another John. And he says, hey Ozzie, any chance you could do a tutorial run through on how to create a D.O.P.E card for long range shooting? So guys, if you don't understand what that means, D.O.P.E is data on previous engagement. So in other words, it's about collecting data, you know, for your rifle setup for long range shooting. So, you know, for example, you if you've sighted in at 100 yards there, okay, and you all of a sudden want to take a shot at 500, well, how many clicks do you come up on your scope with your particular ammunition, okay? So it's basically a system just to record that sort of stuff. I mean, you can get right into it as well and go, okay, when I've got a certain amount of crosswind, you know, how many clicks do I compensate for that as well? So, you know, you can go into it very basically, or you can go into it, you know, quite heavily and then have a heap of data there. For me, honestly, John, like, mate, I think I'd have to explain, you know, MOA and mills and explain long range shooting before I did like a beginner series on this one. But to be quite honest, the only thing that I've got in any sort of long range optics is I just have a little sticker there with different yardage inside the turret, inside the scope cover there. So when I flip it up, you know, I can see it. So it'll have like, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 100 yards. So, you know, I'll have all that there and I'll know how many clicks to come up. Or The other way to do it these days, obviously, is you look at things like, the ballistic system or custom dial system from Loophole, and then you can give all your data to them, and then they'll give you a custom turret. So all you got to do is range out to say like 400 yards, and then just turn your elevation turret up to number 4, and then it's right on. So, there's a few different ways, but yeah, mate, I'd probably have to go into a little bit more detail with long range shooting before I actually did a video on it. But that's all that I do, is just simply have that sticker in the flip up cover. Next question I got here is from Ian. He says, hey Ozzie, what's your honest opinion of electronic fox callers? Do they actually work, or are they a gimmick? Well, mate, it's funny because I've actually used quite extensively the speaker setup from Ruger, the iHunt program. So there's an app on your phone, and I've actually got a video, and I've never actually released this video. It was just something that I had done, and I was actually calling for some wild dogs here on the farm, and I used this program, this iHunt program, with the speaker, and there was dogs howling and all the rest of it. So and I got no response whatsoever. But something I've used for many years, through doing the feral pest control, was I actually just called, using my own voice and everything, bang, straight away, dog calls back, and we're on, and I sort of laughed at it, and I thought, God, I've got all this electronic setup here, and still just my normal voice and years of experience of calling dogs in, I just got an instant response. So that was with wild dogs. With foxes, I mean, it's a lot harder. There's plenty of just basic fox whistles around that, just simply work. You can do that. Or, I've always found that it's very, very easy to call in foxes simply by, the noise of like an injured rabbit or a hare, and basically it's just simple as that. That's all I do. I don't know if you heard Cooper bark in the background there, but he's gone off straight away because, he knows that is the call that I do to bring foxes in. And I've never had any problem with it. The only problem is your lips get a little bit sore, after doing that for an extensive amount of time. So that's where just a basic fox whistle will work, mate. Honestly, I don't really think that you need to go and spend the money for an electronic caller when you're looking at just foxes. I mean, sure, I'm positive that a lot of them out there work, but from my experience, I've just found just the basic fox whistle that you can pick up for like $10, $15 or $20, works just as well. Or, just use your mouth, works out what sort of call that foxes like, and then they just come in. Okay, so the next question I got here is from Edward, and he says, hey Ozzie, any chance of a Lithgow LA105 review? Well, mate, I've done the launch video, where obviously I went down the other half, and we got to shoot it, puts a decent amount of rounds down range. So that probably was the review, even though it's not as in depth as what normally I do. But, obviously that was the first exclusive video looking at that rifle system. So at this stage, look, maybe down the track I might have a look at an in-depth review of it, mate, but nothing's really planned at this stage. Next question I got here is from Richard, and he says, mate, can you explain these uniform gun laws? We're supposed to have uniform gun laws, but for example, over here in WA, I can't have various rifles that you guys can have in Queensland. Good question, mate. You're really stating the obvious to a lot of us. I mean, this is the problem. They talk about uniform gun laws, and this is where it annoys me with a lot of the anti-gunners is, they'll talk about uniform gun laws and they want uniform gun laws, but if that means you being allowed to have something that we can have here in Queensland, oh, no, they don't want that. All they want to do is take the strictest gun laws from each state and just make that across the board, and that's what is really frustrating. Anyhow, that's a story for another time, but yes, it is frustrating because what you'll see is like New South Wales, for example, they've got all those national gun laws there, but then they've gone steps further, to create further and further restrictions. And what it really comes down to is just how much you let these politicians get away with it. I mean, it's very cheap political scoring, in my view, to simply bring in more restrictions on licensed gun owners and then, beat your chest and talk about how you're doing something to curb gun violence in the community, and all these key phrases they like to use, and it's just complete BS in my view. But as I say, mate, that's a story for another time. But yeah, very frustrating. I mean, you know, for years up here doing the occupational shooting as a feral pest controller, you know, I couldn't get a suppressor, for example, where in New South Wales you could. Yet New South Wales, you know, I couldn't even go over the border with an adjustable stock. You know, it's just crazy. Yet down there they can have, you know, bolt action firearms in 50 BMG. Yet up here in Queensland, I mean, they're category R. So anything chambered in 50 BMG is in the category of full auto machine guns. You know, it's just crazy, and it does your head in. But what it really explains to me very crystal clear is that the people who make these laws have absolutely no idea other than on paper. So they may have a general understanding of different firearms on paper. However, they've never been out, they've never used them. They just don't simply understand them, because if they did, the gun laws would be a lot more simplified in my view. But that's just my take on it. Next question I got here is from David, and he says, hi Ozzie, are there any products that you refuse to review? Okay, mate, this is an interesting question. There have been a handful. You know, the previous question I answered here with regards to night vision stuff, I had a look at the ATN X-Sight HD, you know, which is a night vision scope, and I also had a look at it in the 4K version. Now, both times I was just like, there is no way I would spend my money on this. There was just no way I would. The latest one, the 4K one, I had it for about a minute and the whole system froze up on me. I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't do anything like that. And a friend of mine had loaned it to me, and it was brand new. He hadn't even used it. And I just phoned him up and said, mate, I'm bringing it back. I cannot review this. This is just terrible. What else did I send back? I was sent a scope, a Chinese-made scope for long-range shooting, and this is when I had the Sabatti STR in 6.5 Creedmoor. So this Chinese scope, I'd never heard of the brand before. However, the dealer really wanted me to take a look at it, which is fair enough. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. So I said, yeah, I'll have a look at it, but I'm not keen. I'm just not keen on those sort of scopes. And yeah, sure enough, I took one look through it and I thought, no way. And then, because the reality is, it doesn't matter how good something sounds on paper. I mean, you're not going to go out to a long-range competition and see someone with a Chinese-made, you know, $400 or $500 scope for a 5 to 25 by 56 optic. You know, people just go, there's no way, you know, that's quality. So, yep, that as well. Look, there's another couple of things that I've only sent back this week to a company who sent me a red dot, a rangefinder, and a scope, all Chinese made, and to me it was just a cheap knockoff. And you know, it's not even worth my time spending a couple of days doing that with the editing and everything else like that, because guys, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, look, this is good, yeah, it's worked, all the rest of it, if it's not something that I would expect someone to go out and buy. And most people know that, you know, like, there is no way that I will go out and buy a Filipino or a Chinese-made scope and put it on any of my own firearms. I just won't do it. The closest that I'll come to it is obviously, you know, reviewing Chinese-made scope, you know, for like a 22 or something like that. You know, that's as far as I'll go. But I even say in a lot of those reviews, look, personally, I wouldn't buy this for my own gear. I'd buy something a bit better quality. And it's not saying that it doesn't work. I just don't like having to rely on Chinese or Filipino-made products. They're just, I've been bitten too many times before in the past, guys. And I've certainly learnt my lesson with it, and I just don't like the low quality that they offer. And a post that I recently did on Facebook, I discussed this a little bit more, saying that it concerns me that, you know, the market is pushing to this ultra cheap product line, and it concerns me because I think, well, are those quality products going to be there in years to come? You know, I'd certainly like to have the choice, but so many people are just pushing for cheap, and then they curse and carry on when it fails them out in the field, you know, especially if they're out in the middle of nowhere and they can't easily replace anything, I mean, they're down a firearm then because their optic doesn't work. So there's a whole trip ruined. Yeah, I just don't, guys. Most people know it. So yeah, there have been a handful of products that I just won't review. They're just that bad that I just will not review them. Okay guys, that wraps up this month's Q&A. Thanks very much to everyone who submitted the questions there. Really appreciate it. So I hope that you've picked up a few things from it. So we'll catch you on the next month's Q&A when we do that at the end of October.